on this episode of the WildFed podcast.
A black bear attack is predatory. This is fight for your life. If you've got a weapon of any kind on you, use it, because this thing is not there to beat you up. This thing is there to kill you and eat you.
We have a lot of conflicting views about bears. Some people think they're harmless. Some people think they're terribly ferocious. Such a charismatic and really sacred animal. They don't realize the amount of predation.
He finally just ran up to the bear and tried to stop the attack and started beating it with the stick to see if that could distract the bear, and it didn't. Those bears, they're too habituated. You are doing the world a favor when you squeeze that trigger.
They had banned the bear hunt there. While the landscape could support more bears than that, we're beyond our social carrying capacity. So here they come rolling out into the streets, two male bears duking it out. Cars are going by. They're knocking over mailboxes.
Remember, we're meat and they're bears.
Episode number 75 of the WildFed podcast, When Black Bears Attack, with Carl Semencic, is brought to you by Surthrival. In addition to its full line of nutritional supplements, Surthrival is your source for the highest grade zero THC CBD products. Surthrival CBD3 is different than the weak, unvalidated, poorly made CBD products you find in convenience stores, smoke shops, and most health food stores. That's because it's made with 3 CBD extracts in one. Here's how it works. Surthrival CBD3 starts with a nano-sized CBD nutraceutical that enters your bloodstream in minutes, bringing instant results. Then there's a liposomally absorbed CBD nutraceutical designed to stay in your bloodstream longer, up to 24 hours for extended results. And all that's topped off with a full-spectrum organic hemp extract for all the benefits of classically extracted CBD formulas. CBD3 is best in class. In fact, there's nothing that can really compete with it. And right now at surthrival.com, all CBD3 products are on sale with discounts of up to $25 a bottle. No coupon needed. Sale goes to April 2nd. Get your CBD3 at surthrival.com. This episode's also brought to you by wildfoodwarehouse.com. Wild Food Warehouse is your source for hand-foraged, wood-fire-parched wild rice from the Great Lakes and for powdered superfruits and herbs from the Arctic. Check out Wild Food Warehouse's new line of premium powdered berries and herbs from Finland. These powdered wild superfoods are rich in vitamin C, brightly colored antioxidant pigments, and carry all the locked-in flavor from when they were harvested north of the Arctic Circle. They're packed in violet light-blocking Miron glass and make a perfect supplement to your nutrition program, a great ingredient in blended drinks, and are a welcome splash of flavor from the northern tundra of Finland. Check out their delicious bilberry powder. Here we call that blueberry. Their lingonberry powder, sometimes called mountain cranberry. That one's my favorite. And of course, their hand-gathered powdered spruce tips. And remember, Wild Food Warehouse is your source for bulk hand-harvested wild rice too. Head over to wildfoodwarehouse.com where the coupon code WildFed gets you 10% off your order. I'm Daniel Vitalis, and you're listening to the WildFed podcast, a show about reconnecting with nature through hunting, fishing, foraging, and food. WildFed. Food is all around you. If you listen to this show much or you follow me on social media, you know I both love and hunt black bears. Some call it the hunter's paradox and ask how you can both love and kill something you profess to love. For me, that's easy since I view myself as another animal in the life cycle, and the creatures that give their lives for me and my loved ones to eat are hunted and eaten with a deep sense of gratitude and thankfulness. But when you tell people you hunt black bears, sometimes you get a reaction like, "Isn't that dangerous?" Those of us who spend time around these bears tend not to see them that way. And while, of course, black bears are capable of being dangerous, over time you come to think of them like big, shy dogs. Certainly not like the other more notoriously dangerous bears of this continent, the brown bear or the polar bear, who attack our own species more frequently and therefore have a reputation as animals that we need to be extremely mindful of. But black bears, we're often told, are far more shy and far less aggressive than their cousins, and common tropes like "they're more afraid of you than you are of them" get repeated often, which has led to a kind of lackadaisical attitude about them that can best be summed up by the many videos we see of park visitors getting shockingly close to them for selfies when these elusive animals show themselves in state or national parks. But black bears sometimes do attack, and when they do, the attack is usually of a very different nature than the more common brown bear attack. Brown bears and their smaller but more aggressive subspecies, the grizzly bear, most often attack territorially, but they don't usually predate on humans. It seems that more often than not, apes just aren't on their menu. Still, the risks in grizzly country are high, and folks spending time there very often carry tools like bear spray or large caliber pistols for self-defense, just in case the unthinkable happens. And they're given rather sound advice like cover your neck, play dead, and don't fight back. That's because these bears want you out of their territory, but they most often aren't looking to make a meal of you. The same can't be said for black bears. When black bears attack, they most often have decided you are on the menu, and this requires a very different approach to how you handle an attack, and really how you think of black bears in general. Now, it's rare, but that said, it's actually far more common than you might think, and Carl Semencic has written a book called Encounter, which deals with just this topic. Now, I want to say I share the following interview with full respect for the victims and family members who've been impacted by these stories or stories like these. Please forgive Carl and I for moments in this interview where we may seem cavalier or even laugh a bit as we talk. It's graveyard humor, a way of dealing with conversations about things that are otherwise horrifying to talk about. And I'm in no way trying to sensationalize these stories. Actually, they don't need any sensationalizing, just good, clean reporting. And I think people deserve to know about them. Of course, I understand why nearly every negative black bear encounter is reported with the almost obligatory authorities assure us that these attacks and attacks like them are extremely rare. But at some point, it's important to be realistic too. Home invasions are rare, but I lock my doors. I don't think I'll ever die in a car accident, but I wear a seatbelt. I pray my home never burns, but I have fire extinguishers. Flights rarely crash, but I'm glad there's a plan in place and safety briefings before the flight. It's the same with bear attacks, particularly black bear attacks. It probably won't happen, but when it does, it's likely the most terrifying, violent, and rapid critical incident of a person's life, and very few people have ever been briefed on how to handle it. So it's in that spirit I share the following interview, to give you a realistic counterbalance to the image of bears that have become so pervasive in our culture. Cuddly, living teddies that just want you to snug them or take a selfie with them. Black bears are elusive and usually very timid around humans too, but occasionally they aren't. And what follows are a handful of accounts that might give you a more realistic appreciation of these beautiful, powerful, but sometimes predatory animals. Carl Semencic, welcome to the show.
Hi.
We're going to be talking about black bear attacks today, which is a conversation that you don't hear too much about. And I'm kind of excited to go over some of the data with you. But first, you're just such an interesting and eclectic guy. Tell us a little bit about yourself, because you're involved in so many different things.
Well, I keep hearing from others what you just said, so I guess I must be a weirdo in my own way. But I'm interested in a lot of things. I'm a PhD archaeologist, as well as, a muzzleloader hunter, traditional muzzleloader, not these modern guns that are, passed for muzzleloaders because laws are lax. A member of the New York Paleontological Society. I've been living all my life, with the exception of time in the field doing archaeology in the old days, within 15 minutes or less drive from JFK Airport.
Wow.
In Nassau County. So, obviously this is the wrong place for me to have been all my life.
I want to ask you, though, how you came to writing your bear book. It's called Encounter, The Black Bear and Man.
Yep.
And I came across it last year and was really stunned by the content because, what I've always heard is what we all hear repeated. Oh, it's the grizzly bear, it's the brown bear that attacks people, but the black bear is shy and always runs away. And, you don't have to worry about that. And the real story is a little more complicated than that. But I'm curious, I know you black bear hunt, but how did you come to actually, an interest in this content and writing this book?
I've always had an interest in, well, first of all, the outdoors and muzzleloader hunting. But I've always had an interest in bears. Long before I started hunting bear, I would take my family up to the White Mountains in New Hampshire, and we'd stay in a little cabin. And, we loved it up there for so many years. And I've been all over the world. I've been, everywhere. I've done 3 photo safaris in Africa, and I've been all through New Zealand and all over Europe and Japan. But if you were to ask me where I was happiest in my life, I'd probably say in that little cabin in the White Mountains in New Hampshire. And there were a lot of bear up there. And I bought myself one of these 500,000 candle power spotlights, and I would drive up to the local dump and spotlight bears at night. And it was just fascinating that these...
What town were you in?
In Twin Mountain.
Okay, where's that?
It's right on Route 3, north of Route 302. If you know where the Mount Washington Hotel is.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay, well, you drive to Route 3 from there and head north just about 4 miles, 5 miles.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not far from the North Conway area, so I'm pretty familiar, yeah. But so you've had an interest in bears, but how did you arrive at this idea of bear attacks? Because it's just something that most of us have been told not to really think about. It doesn't happen.
Well, I think I mentioned in my book that I was charged by a black bear up in Canada, up in New Brunswick, Canada. We got up there to hunt bear, and well, I guess that wasn't my first interest in bears. I don't know. Maybe I just got tired of hearing that they weren't dangerous. And, I mean, there's a big difference between a brown bear attack and a black bear attack. Brown bear attack is probably territorial. A black bear attack is predatory. And at what point I thought people should know this, I really don't know. But I'll tell you what, that they say that they will mock charge you. Well, what happened to me up in the woods of New Brunswick that day, there was nothing mock about it. I learned as that thing charged me on a Sunday when I had no gun out in the woods by myself, that as the bear is coming at you, he's thinking, is this thing dangerous or shall I kill it? And if you play your cards right, and we'll talk about somebody who didn't later, if you play your cards right and don't freak out, don't turn your back and run, don't try to climb a tree, just stand there calmly, which is not an easy thing to do, by the way, as the thing is coming at you, it will change its mind. It'll say, you know what, this thing is just too confident. I'm going to get away from it.
Not an easy thing to do, I imagine, when you're being charged.
Well, you go into another frame of mind, or at least I did. I was telling somebody up in Bear Mountain, New York, not very long ago, as we were looking at the cinnamon phase brown bears that they had on display there, and they still have. They've been there for a long time. I was telling them about that charge, and I said, if you had a video of me standing there with this thing coming at me, you think, wow, what a brave guy. Bravery had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
My mind was somewhere else altogether.
Yeah. And this was in the springtime?
That, offhand, I don't forget. I'm sure I mentioned it in my book, but was that fall or was that spring? All I remember for sure is it was Sunday, and which is why I didn't have a gun, because you're not allowed in the field with a gun hunting on a Sunday up there. And if I had a guess, I would say fall, but I'm not sure offhand.
Yeah, it's really interesting what you were saying before about the difference between a brown bear attack and a black bear attack, because I think we've all heard with the brown bear, it's the play dead, cover your neck, don't do anything to instigate the fight. And, it makes me think about the study of human violence, because the people who study that break it down into two categories. They say you have predatory violence and social violence, or social and asocial, they'll call it. And, so social violence is like you go into the bar and this guy is like, what are you doing in here? You don't belong here. And he's making a big scene. And that's like the brown bear. You just want to back off. Hey, buddy, this is your bar. I'm not looking for a fight. You're badass. I'm nobody. You're amazing. I suck. And that guy just wants everyone to see that he's in charge. It's territorial. But there's this asocial violence, like the serial killer or the serial rapist. That person ambushes you and you want to do the opposite. You fight for your life. You never, ever cower to the predator, because that person's looking for your body or your life. And so I realized reading your book, it's like, oh, this is the same thing. The brown bear is like the social violence. It's about territory. But if the black bear attacks, it wants your body or your life, right?
You just nailed it. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about that, and what are the kind of circumstances that lead to these black bear attacks?
How the encounter begins can be anything. In my case, it was just a bear walking through the woods, and it came upon me. and it didn't like me, and it thought, what are you doing here? These are my woods. And I was so far off in the woods up in New Brunswick, this particular bear may never have seen a person before, and he didn't know what to make out of me, whether he should kill me or get the heck away from me, and ultimately he decided, get the heck away from me. And I guess he never figured out he'd have won that fight.
Yeah. How close did he get to you?
Oh, I would say 10 yards.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it was close. And he came on me. I mean, it is so fast. I forget whose book it was I was reading about brown bear attacks. And they were saying, well, this guy was found torn to pieces by a grizzly bear up in the mountains, and he had his rifle right in his hands. Why didn't he shoot it? I'll tell you why. Mm-hmm. It comes at you like Superman.
Yeah.
So fast you haven't got time to react.
Yeah, 4 legs all working together.
And they're fast.
Yeah, very muscular animals too. So yeah, this idea then, that why do you think we have this idea that black bears don't attack people? Because the number of stories, and I don't remember the date range. You kind of restricted the stories that you told in the book to a pretty narrowly defined range of dates, just to kind of show, I got the impression at least, to show how common they actually can be. You weren't like, here's all the black bear attacks in U.S. history. You were kind of giving them in a pretty tight range of time, and there was just story after story. They had a lot of similarities, but I was surprised at how many there were. Well,
that's just a few.
Yeah.
I'm looking at, a bunch more that if I continue this book, which I want to do, I think I will do that.
Expand it
that
a
are
little bit.
much, just continue,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to stop this book, but when I told the publisher that I had more, they said, no, you got enough right here. Okay. But I'm looking at one from July 20th, 2020, a deadly attack in Canada. September 2019, deadly attack in Canada. And one in 2014, less than 50 miles from where I live now. And remember, I live less than 15 minutes east of JFK Airport.
Right. Yeah. Tell us some of these stories.
Well, one that I would have to call the park, because I just wouldn't be able to bring myself to call the family of this guy. But a Rutgers student, 22, 23 years old, this Indian guy, his name was Darsh Patel, decided to take a walk in a park, in a state park in New Jersey. And he and 4 or 5 of his friends were walking along, and they came upon a bear. And at first they thought, they'd read all the newspaper articles, they're safe. So they just stood there, and they decided they'd get a picture of it until it started to come toward them. And I certainly do not blame any of them for doing what they did, because who knows what to do unless you go into this frame of mind that I was in when this thing charged me. They did exactly the wrong thing.
We'll get right back to the show in a moment, but first, this episode of the WildFed podcast is brought to you by the Salmon Sisters of Alaska. I had a great time interviewing Emma and Claire, aka the Salmon Sisters, for episode number 51 of this podcast called Made of Salmon. These ladies grew up homesteading in Alaska, where they still live and work commercial fishing for salmon, halibut, and Pacific cod. If you love wild food and you want to sample or fill your freezer with wild-caught Alaskan salmon, cod, or halibut, head over to aksalmonsisters.com, where the coupon code WildFed gets you 10% off your first order of wild fish. Check out their Wild Alaska Coho Salmon Box for vacuum-sealed serving-size portions, or their Wild Alaskan Sockeye Salmon Box for full fillets that'll feed your family and fill your freezer. They've got a smoked sockeye box with ready-to-eat smoked salmon in pouches, and their smoked salmon tins, which are also ready to eat. Also, check out their beautiful cookbook, their super cool women's clothing line, and their own custom line of printed Extra Tough brand boots. Head over to aksalmonsisters.com to check out their store and use the coupon code WildFed to get 10% off your first order of wild Alaskan fish. Now, back to the show.
They started to back off, then they started to run away together, and then as they were running, they separated until they got back to their car and realized one of them was missing.
Oh, no. Yeah.
And that was Darsh Patel. So they called the authorities, and the authorities went out there and found the bear eating Darsh Patel,
Wow.
dead, of course, and it was protecting its kill. And why the authorities, who had guns, waited a half hour before shooting the bear, I don't know.
Really,
But,
huh?
yeah, I mean, they just waited and waited and made
Yeah.
noises at it. What, they wanted it to run away so they could wonder where it was later? I don't know.
Right.
But they finally killed it, and its stomach was full of Darsh Patel.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, the thing that stands out to me is that this is a hungry bear or a I think one of the things that I recall was that a lot of the bears, after they've been killed, show signs of being somewhat malnourished or lean, that these are typically hungry. No? Is that not true?
Nope. They're the one that was maybe in the most horrendous attack of all, they say may have been hungry. But
Wow.
but yeah, they'll just, if they have just an appetite, they'll, and they, remember, we're meat and they're bears.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's so interesting, man. I mean, we have this very confusing ideas about bears, don't we? It's some people think they're harmless, some people think they're terribly ferocious, some people think they're predators, some people think they're mostly plant eaters. It's like we have a lot of conflicting views, and then that's all compounded with this whole teddy bear, Pooh Bear kind of concept that's infiltrated our whole conceptualization of bears as well. So you paint that picture and they sound so terribly ferocious. I mean, it's obviously not the typical bear encounter, but it happens. Can you tell us any other stories, and can we start to pick apart any common themes?
Well, common themes, I'll tell you two things that people should know. One, and this surprised me, we talk about how the most dangerous place to be is between a sow bear and her cubs. And sure enough, you're going to get beat up in a situation like that. But I could not find one case of a person being killed by a sow bear because it was between her and her cubs. Not one. Mostly they're males. Often they're young males. And there's no apparent reason. And yeah, we can talk about stories. And we think, well, if they're little, they're not going to be dangerous. Yeah, you ever have like a 130-pound dog?
Yeah.
You know how strong that dog thing
Trying
is?
to hold one down. I know my dog's probably 75 pounds at the most, and when she comes home with porcupine quills in her face and I got to try to hold her down and pull those out, her ability to just twist and flip and pull and yank, and I mean, it's amazing to me how hard she is to hold down. So the idea of an animal that big, it's a little scary. And you said a young male. So what would you kind of estimate weights to be of some of these bears?
Well, anywhere here. I'm going to tell you one story, and this is an unusual one because A, the bears were small, and B, they were both females. At the time that this attack took place up in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, there was all this stink up in New Jersey about the black bear hunt, and there shouldn't be a hunt, and these things come to my yard all the time, and so what? They eat the bird feeder, but they're not dangerous. Well, that was just about to go to court when a report came out, and it was a report about a lady named Glenda Ann Bradley. She's age 52, and she and her husband, Ralph Hill, they had divorced, but they were getting back together, and they decided to go hiking through the woods up in Great Smoky Mountain National Park. And he said, you know what? I'm going to go do a little fishing. I'll just be down the road fishing, and if you want to come, you come. If you want to stay here, she said, you know what? I'm going to hang out here. Well, he came back after fishing, and he found her mangled body. And there were two bears standing over her. One was a 111-pound female. The other one was her cub.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they were eating her.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, so that is not what the average person would be afraid of, right? From a distance in particular. And there was no evidence that she had any food on her. There was no evidence that she had approached them. They just decided she was meat on the hoof.
Yeah.
Okay, so, another thing, and this is very important, dogs. You do not want to be in the woods where there are bears with a dog. Because what invariably happens, and I found many cases of this, is the dog will sniff out the bear and charge at it and, and worry the bear, barking at it, and the bear will charge the dog. Now, what's a dog going to do? Dog is going to run back to you.
Yeah, good dog. Good dog.
Yeah, good dog, right. So that, I have numerous cases, some in the book, some not, of people who should not have been in the woods with their dog. As a matter of fact, there's one right up in the White Mountains, a guy named the local doctor in Sugar Hill. His name is Dr. Charles Walcott. And I tried numerous times to get in touch with him about this, and I ended up just talking to locals who knew him about the attack. He didn't want to talk about it. He was off with his dog, walking right there in Sugar Hill, or running, actually, jogging in Sugar Hill. I'm sure you know where that is.
Mm-hmm.
And his dog came upon a bear and did what dogs do, and then did what dogs do after the bear charges and ran back to him. And that female had a cub, and it beat him up, and he managed to get away from it, and he ran, and it caught him and beat him up again, but he was not killed. He was not eaten. She just wanted to make the point that you don't go near my baby. Mm-hmm. And then another case of
let me just comment on that, because that's interesting. So there's that, it's not necessarily the person's gotten between the cub and the mother bear, but the dog has harassed the baby bear maybe, and that initiates that protective. So that's not necessarily a predatory attack as much as that's a protective attack from her, but instigated by the person's dog running freely.
That is right. And again, I will repeat, dumbest thing you can do in bear country is have your dog off lead and running around the woods. Okay, then there's a case of this guy, David Minks, who, again, he was impossible to get a hold of, and I finally figured out why. He was a hermit. And he lived off on his own acreage in the woods in a cabin. And he was there with his dog. And he's walking around, and his dog charged at a bush, and out came the bear. And the dog ran to him, and Minks had time to climb a tree real fast, but bears can climb trees. So it came up very well. Grizzly bears not as well. I don't think a grizzly bear has ever been found any higher than 16 or 18 feet in a tree, whereas a black bear will just climb to the top of the tree.
I've seen black bears over 600 pounds climb trees, no problem.
Yeah, no problem, like squirrels, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, David Minks just kept kicking at the bear, and the bear, he's running around. He's a total hermit in the woods, barefoot. And this thing
he's barefoot, and he's kicking down at the bear?
Yeah, well, he didn't have any choice. Yeah. At that point, what are you going to do? You're up in a tree, and the bear's coming up at you, and you've got no shoes on, Well, there go your feet. So it mangled his feet pretty badly, but finally, the dog came back, and the bear went after the dog, and he saw a chance to get away with it. He was pretty badly hurt, but that is another case of a dog having precipitated this entire thing.
Yeah, wow. And this idea of as soon as you start running, you must be, it's like with a dog, you start running and it initiates that prey drive a little bit. So
bingo.
So keep your dog on a lead. And if confronted by a black bear, this is not the back down, play dead, or try to run away scenario.
But on the contrary, this is
stand your ground.
No, this is fight for your life.
Yeah.
Fight for your life. If you've got a weapon of any kind on you, use it, because this thing is not there to beat you up. This thing is there to kill you and eat you.
Yeah. Wow, it's really amazing to think about. I think very few people in the outdoor world carry a weapon with them most of the time. I'm picturing people would have probably maybe climbing those sort of, what do you call those, trekking poles, stuff like that, But out here in the East, where we have so many black bears but no brown bears, people don't carry bear spray. It's not really part of the culture. People never think about it,
Well, I don't know if I'd carry bear spray either. I think a big knife is what you want. Yeah. And when it's on, you just start stabbing.
Yeah, wow. It's pretty hard to think about that with a bear, man. That's pretty incredible. Are there stories of people who try to run and are then taken from behind?
Yeah. This, what was her name? Let's see. Oh, yeah. Maureen Mon, who, again, I tried to contact time and time again until finally she did get in touch with me, and she really wanted to talk once she got in touch with me. But she was out in Grand Teton National Park. And up there, the bears are, they can be black, but a black bear, a black bear can be pure white.
Right.
But in this area, they're very often cinnamon colored. And so she's walking along a trail, and she comes upon a cinnamon coated black bear, and just walked into it totally accidentally. And she had no dog, she had no nothing. And the bear started to come at her. And she backed off, she was doing the right thing. And she's backing off and backing off and backing off. And the bear just kept coming until finally it was on her. And it knocked her down, and it was beating her up. And she was right on the precipice of a hill that led down into a lake. And she didn't mean to roll down the hill, but she got swatted. And she started to roll down the hill really fast until she found a chance to stand on her feet and run toward the lake with the bear right behind her. And she dove in, and the bear dove in after her.
Wow.
And started to swim after her.
They swim pretty well too. I've seen bears crossing rivers, and they're effective in the water.
Come to think of it, I never thought about this either. I've never seen a bear in the water. But yeah, they do swim really well. So she started to swim away from this thing in this lake. And people on shore saw what was happening. Some thought she was swimming with her huge dog, and others kind of realized what was going on and started throwing rocks. And at first the bear went back and then decided, no, these rocks are not dangerous enough. I want that woman. And went after her again until she ran into somebody with a canoe. And they got her out of there. But she got beat up pretty bad. So yeah, you don't want to run. You do not want to run from the bear. You're not going to run faster than it does.
Yeah. Wow, my goodness. What role do you think that hunting or management plays in any of this, or does it almost not matter?
I think that's really, really important. There's hunting and there's hunting. If you're out west and you're not in dense forest, and you've got a 30-06 and a scope and everything else, and you see a bear 300 yards away, and you decide, I got a bead on it, I'm going to shoot it. That's one kind of hunting. But especially if you hunt the way I do, in the woods, deep woods, with a home cast round ball, that you made out of somebody's plumbing, and a patch that you made out of some old deer leather somewhere, and greased with bear grease, with 100 grain triple FG charge and your musket 54 caliber, you're close range hunting. And when you're hunting that close, what's it going to be at most 30 yards? These bears know you're there. Matter of fact, I developed a hunting technique that I'll tell you about later. But those bears know you're there. They know you're close. If you get one that comes on anyway, you are doing the world a favor when you squeeze that trigger and kill it. They're too habituated.
Interesting. Okay.
So
interesting. We hunt here in New Hampshire, and I hope I don't offend your sensibilities, because your hunting style is not just sort of unique, but a little outside of my skill set. But
dogs, right? You're hunting with dogs.
Yeah, I've done dog and bait hunting. Those are the two main methods that we use here in Maine, and we're always very close to these bears. And so, and many of them obviously get away, right? Or we pull the dogs off the tree, or, a lot of them are chased in the training season, or, they are around people, but they understand sort of the risk of being around people, I think. So many surely have been shot at. Is that the kind of thing that you think is important too, that there's a general fear of man, or do you think that, it's mainly removing the types of individuals who are precocious enough to go after people?
I think it's both. I think you want to remove those bears for sure. But also, remember, bears learn what man is and how to survive in the woods from their mothers. And you want their mothers to teach them to stay the hell away from us. Yeah. I like real, what I consider to be real fair sport. My round ball that I made, and it's the only way I've ever hunted. I've never hunted anything with a modern gun.
Oh, no kidding.
Never. Yeah, never.
With the weapons that you hunt with, what does it take for you to reload that?
See, I'll make myself a little speed loader on the side. I'll have a little vial with 100 grain triple FG charge, and a patch sitting on a branch if I'm in a tree, and a ball right in my shirt pocket, and I can reload from the time I've shot in 60 seconds.
Okay, I'd love to hear about this bear hunting technique that you were talking about.
Well, my technique is simply to go out there with a Hawkins-style gun, and I customize them. I'll change them a little. I'll put a barrel on that can use an enormous charge, and something that I know to be very, very accurate. I might even use a traditional peep sight, and they are traditional, not telescopic, but just a peep sight. Mm-hmm. And I'll bait, but if you bait bears to hunt, that doesn't mean you're going to get a bear.
Yeah, definitely not.
No. I mean, they'll smell the food from a mile away, but they'll smell you too. Matter of fact,
and a lot of them will come in after dark, knowing that that's the safer time for them.
Well, the technique that I developed, and I had never heard of anyone doing this until I thought this is a good idea. After spending a lot of time in the woods with bears and realizing that they smell you, man, I could tell you stories, but they smell you and they know you're there. What I started to do, if I was going to be up in New Brunswick, is I'd wear a T-shirt out in the garden when I was mowing the lawn in July, and and I'd sweat it up good. And when I came in, before I showered, I'd take this thing and I'd put it in a Ziploc plastic bag. And I'd wait until next week when I was going to mow the lawn, and I'd take that stinking shirt out again, and I'd put it on, and I'd go out and stink it up again. And then a week before I was going to be up, and I heard, yeah, we got a site for you. There's a good bear trail coming into it. I'd mail that shirt up, and I'd say, nail this right to where my stand is going to be. And what the bears will do, it's scent conditioning. Mm-hmm. At first, they'll come in, they won't go anywhere near the site. They smell you. The second night, that same guy sitting up there in that tree, let me get a little closer, see what's going on here. Until ultimately, and this has happened every single time, ultimately when they realize, this is somebody trying to fool me, they'll climb up in the tree, grab that shirt, and tear it to pieces. I tell people that, then they smell it again and they're coming into that tree and it's me. They think you're crazy. You're out of your mind. But the idea is not to avoid bear when you're
right, when you're bear hunting.
Right.
Oh, that's interesting. Hey, having studied dogs as much as you have, and having the experience you have with bears, what do you think about a black bear's intelligence? How would you sort of rate it based on what you've seen and read?
Well, intelligence in animals and intelligence in people. I have an African gray parrot inside that I've had for around 13, 14 years. And if there were a Mensa for birds, he would absolutely be in Mensa. He'd have smoked the exam. Wow. But sometimes you just don't understand why they're doing what they're doing. It's because they're birds, and they don't think exactly like we do, and neither do dogs. I mean, come on, we've all had dogs, and there are times you'll look and think, why did you do that?
There are things I cannot figure out why my dog does habitually that just make no sense to me at all.
Right, 90% of the time, everything is fine. Let's go for a walk. Let's do this. Let's do that. Let's play with the ball, and then out of nowhere, something you never would have anticipated. Well, same with bears.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, if you could pit sort of dog intelligence and bear intelligence against each other, how do you think they would, rate?
Well, that's a tough question because bears are working with senses that are beyond belief. And I guess dogs are too, but you never really see it like you do in bears. Yeah. Like, for example, in my book, I mentioned having shot the wrong bear one time, and his head is hanging in my den right now. And the reason I shot the wrong bear is I was sitting up in a tree and I'm waiting, a couple of hours passing. And suddenly from behind a bush, I saw an ear flicker. And I thought, there we go. I said, I'm not going to shoot him through the bush. I'm going to wait until he's out in that clearing. And I got my gun ready, and I cocked it. I took off the nipple protector, I'm ready to shoot. And this bear comes walking out, and he's big. Maybe not 300, but he's a big bear. And he comes walking out, and the wind was blowing not at him, but maybe 15 yards ahead of him, 20 yards ahead of him from me to that spot. Mm-hmm. And he walked out confidently until he hit that very spot where the wind was blowing. Right. And the effect upon the bear was exactly the same as if I'd stood up and screamed, "I'll kill you!"
Yeah.
It took off like crazy. So the way I ended up shooting the wrong bear is I thought, what do I do now? He looped around that way. Is he coming back that way? Or is he going to go back the same way that I saw him before? So I waited, and 20 minutes, half hour pass, and I see an ear flicker. And I thought, that's not going to happen again. As soon as that thing steps out, I'm killing it. Well, it's a 100-pound bear.
Oh, okay.
So shot the wrong bear.
Yeah, so that other bear had smelled another bear coming in.
Well, actually, the little ones, especially little males, this one had a big scar down his chest too. So he'd been in a fight with a larger male. They know that big male bears are dangerous. Mm-hmm. So he was very trepidatious waiting behind that bush. And he waited for quite a while. And I'm sure it wasn't me he was afraid of. It was that other bear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I think with black bears, because of they're such a charismatic and really sacred animal in so many ways, I think that people want to humanize them and, teddy bearize them so much that they maybe they don't realize the amount of predation on young bears by larger, older male bears, right? I mean, they're probably, when you look at who are the number one and number two predators for bears, it's people and then other bears, right?
I think it's probably other bears and then people.
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, they'll run down a deer too if they get a chance in a short burst. They're very fast. They'll hunt deer.
Yeah, it's really cool to think about that. Have you ever seen that video footage of the two male bears duking it out in New Jersey in the street? And they're just cars are going by, they're knocking over mailboxes. I mean, these are both bears they're both 500 plus.
Oof.
Just battling it out in the street. And it was, I think they had banned the bear hunt there, had recently banned bear hunting there. And it was just mistake. Sort of here they come rolling out into the streets, In Maine, we have, I was just talking to the commissioner of Inland Fish and Wildlife. She said our new estimate is, I think, 43,000, between 43 and 47,000 black bears. I can't remember what she said, but the last estimate, we were at 35,000 was the estimate last year, but now it's, I think it's 43,000 now. Anyway, they say while the landscape could support more bears than that, we're beyond our social carrying capacity. So the issue is that they're spilling out into towns, backyards, bird feeders, those kind of things where now it's that, not that the landscape can't tolerate it, but that the people won't tolerate it.
Well, that's much scarier than many realize. Because again, the bears, 90% of the time they might do what you think they're going to do, and then 10% of the time they'll eat you.
So I guess sort of to conclude on all that, give people your sort of rundown on how they should be when they know they're going into bear country, how they should approach it and what should they think about beforehand, and what are the key things that they need to remember, because the amount of recreators in the woods is just increasing and increasing and increasing, but the ecological knowledge is decreasing quite a bit, I'd say. So you have this kind of perfect storm scenario where you have more people than ever, but they know a little bit less about wildlife than the generation before them,
Well, first of all, and this, I'll tell anybody who'll listen, that in my lifetime alone, the global human population has tripled.
Wow.
Someone tripled, right?
Wow.
Now, how does that play out? I mean, look, I like Rush Limbaugh, but when he says, "Oh, come on, you could fit all the people in the world in Texas shoulder to shoulder," you can't live shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Doesn't sound like a very nice life.
Yeah. I mean, we can't continue this because we are stepping all over wildlife's territory. And there are going to be confrontations. And the more we do that, the more we have to make them respectful of us. And the more we have to worry about our own population, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe our cats and dogs a little bit as well.
Yeah. Let me tell you one of the most horrific, and if this doesn't get your attention.
Yeah, please, man. I'd like to hear as many of these stories as you want to tell.
Yeah, and again, it was, it's hard for me. I didn't want to write a book that just sensationalized, somebody else's death. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I really hesitated to call people on the one hand. And on the other hand, I felt, well, if I'm just going to read newspaper articles and write a book, what have I done? Right?
Book report.
Yeah, book report. So there's this woman who lived in Texas, and she divorced her husband. She had a couple of kids, a boy and a girl. And she got a call from friends of hers in Alaska and said, look, we've lined you up with a job up here, where we live. It's great. Why don't you come on up and stay with us? Take the job. There's a house available right next door. I'm sure you can afford. And she thought, what the heck? So she loaded up her truck and her two kids, and she's driving up toward Laird Spring. She's driving up toward Alaska. And as she's going through British Columbia, Canada, there's Laird Spring Hot Spring Park. And she thought, you know what, this would be a good place to take it easy. Her name was Patty McConnell, 37 years old. And she's driving from Paris, Texas, and she gets up to Laird Spring, and there's a nice hot spring there. And she and the kids and a bunch of other people are in the hot spring. And her son wanted to take a walk. So her daughter had been playing with another young girl. And the family's right there, and she'd been talking to the family. She said, do you mind if I leave her here while I just walk up this trail a little way with my son? She said, no, go ahead. So she starts walking up with her son, and they encounter a bear that's on the trail, and it's eating berries. Her son's name was Kelly. He was 13 at the time. The daughter's name was Kristen, and she's 7 back at the spring. And the bear they encountered was, some say 225, some say 250. It was a male. It took one look at them and attacked for no apparent reason. Just attacked like a maniac, knocked her down, Patty down, and just started mauling her. And the son went running over and tried to stop the attack, beating on the bear. Try to envision this, right? And there's a bunch of people watching all this from the spring too.
Right.
And the bear just kept mauling her until finally it had it and started mauling the kid. So of the people watching, there was a truck driver. His name was Ray Kitchen. And he's hauling dynamite, but he decided to take it easy with his son by the hot spring too. His son had been driving with him. And he thought, this is not good. And he grabbed a stick and he started up the trail, and he's beating on the handrail on the trail to see if that could distract the bear. And it didn't. The bear is still mauling the kid. So he finally, he was a brave guy, he finally just ran up to the bear and started beating it with the stick. And the bear took his head off. Right?
Wow.
Just took his head off. Now, imagine, there's a whole bunch of people watching this.
And they're all just soaking in a hot spring, like
no, they'd gotten out and they were all yelling.
I mean, that's where they were. They were all sitting in the springs.
Yeah, soaking, sitting in the spring until they saw this.
Oh my goodness! I mean, because for me, when I think about a hot spring, that's like my happy place. Like
right.
I love nothing like it. And then it goes from that to this. Wow.
Have you been to Iceland?
No, not yet. No.
Nice hot springs up there.
Yeah, that's what I hear. Yeah.
So anyway, so they were all watching this, and they're freaking out completely. And one guy, his name was Ari van der Venden, or something like that, of Calgary. Even though he's down at the bottom, and they're all freaking out, he freaked out more than the others, and he just turned around and started to run. And here goes prey drive. Here's this bear busy. He had decapitated Ray Kitchen. And he killed the woman, and the boy was badly mauled, 13-year-old boy, but still alive. And this guy just starts to run in the other direction, and the bear just takes off after him, right through the crowd of people who were watching, and going after Ari. And he caught him, and he just knocked him down and started tearing him up and started to eat him. Well, this guy named Dwayne Egerbrotten, his name was, sees all this, and he thought, I got to get involved. So all he had back at his car was a .22. So he ran into a preacher whose son said, well, we have a 30-30 in our thing here, in our camper. He grabs the 30-30. This guy got within 4 feet of this bear that was tearing this guy, Ari, to pieces, put the gun to his head, and killed the bear. But can you imagine being part of that scene? I mean, this is what they're capable of.
Yeah, the idea of the decapitation is just...
I know. And you know what really got me is I talked to his wife. I called his wife. I was so reluctant to call her. It turned out she just really wanted to talk. I mean, she said, you have no idea what this has done to me. I mean, my husband was decapitated, but he was my sole provider. My life is ruined. You know, She said, I'm living here all alone, you know, unable to feed myself because I've got nobody earning enough money to keep us going. Wow. She said she kept impressing upon me that I should have life insurance. You know, just in the off chance a bear should kill me too, you know, decapitate me. Wow. But she stressed how important that was. And we didn't have any life insurance. We never thought we needed it, you know. She said, but it's not just the victim of the bear attack. You know, it's the overall situation that the family finds itself in too.
Man, and the idea of how quickly a firearm can solve that problem, and you know, there's just such a negative connotation now around the gun in our culture, and it's just when it's the right tool, it's like the only right tool. It's the tool you need right away. You know, so much could have been prevented here.
Right, bears are good. Firearms are bad. That's what we hear.
Right. Yeah, right? Yeah.
I mean, have you ever seen an article about a bear attack in which they said, this is extremely unusual, nothing to worry about here. You know, this happened once, but highly unlikely to happen again.
Yeah, they always do that.
Why not just say, look, this is an unusual attack, but it can happen. Be careful.
Right. Yep. We had in Maine this year, we had our first, you probably heard about it, but our first great white attack on a lethal kill. And kind of, you know, I mean, I feel really sensitive here being in Maine talking about it because I don't know the people involved. And I'm it's like you just described. I can't imagine these phone calls that you've had. I mean, but, you know, but at the same time, living here, I do feel like it's an important thing to talk about because it was that same story. It was this idea, hey, this doesn't happen though, so don't worry. And it's like, well, it just happened, and we have more and more of these. Yeah, exactly. And there are more of these sharks here right now as the water's warm, and there's more seals. And it seems like, well, it could probably happen again too. You know, I mean, it's something that people should be considering. I mean, we wear seatbelts and have fire extinguishers, and you know, we do all these things. But you know, it does seem like a disservice to tell people it can't happen. But I think with the bear stories you've been telling, just how many of them there are is really, really shocking.
What you'll read in my book is the tip of the iceberg, and that's why I really should go on, you know, and write more. And you know, they say lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place. Well, if you'll read my book, you'll see that in Algonquin Park in Ontario, we've got 3 right in the park, deadly attacks. And right within the vicinity, 3 more that I'm aware of. You know, but anyway, getting back to sharks, they and I have a deal. I don't go in the water. They don't come to my
house. All right. That's just one less that you have to deal with. But those black bears are still potential.
Right.
I'm curious about your relationship to bears personally, because my experience is that most of the people who hunt bears, not all of them I've met, but most of them have a pretty special relationship to them. And, you know, I think here we are talking about the dangerous side of them, but doesn't mean that we don't see a positive side to them and a beautiful side to them too. So I'm just curious because it seems like you really love bears in addition to...
I do. I mean, look, bears are indigenous to North America. We are not, but you know, they belong here, and I would never want to see them gone. Yeah. So if anyone belongs here, it's them, not us.
Right. Yeah.
But we can't, but we're here and we're growing. Our population is growing. There are like 325 million people in America today. When I was a kid, it was 187 million.
Wow.
I mean, that's a lot of people. We're expanding our range. We're expanding our range into theirs. And either we're going to get eaten or we're going to have to make them respectful of us. Mm-hmm. And be respectful of them.
Cool. Give us your sort of concluding thoughts on all of this. I mean, I hope you write more to the book because I would really like to see, how you amend it and follow up on some of the other accounts. But what are your concluding thoughts on all this? Because I think for a lot of people listening, they're like probably a little surprised, hadn't heard this stuff before.
Well, my concluding thoughts are I think we have to stop every time there's a bear attack, telling people who know nothing about bears that they're not dangerous and that the attack is very unusual. Two, don't worry so much about the female bear with the cubs. Just worry about bears in general, because they're predators. They're carnivores. They're omnivores, but they eat meat. If you're going to be off in the woods, leave your dog home.
Yeah.
That Dr. Walcott, as a matter of fact, his wife, when she was Dr. Walcott up in Franconia, up in Sugar Hill, when she was interviewed, what do you think about this? She said, if you're going to go in the woods, don't have a stupid dog with you.
When you were talking about people just not knowing that bears can be dangerous, the number of videos that I have seen in the last year or so of people in parks and a bear comes out and they actually walk right up to the bear and start doing selfies, trying to pet it. Some of the behavior that you see from tourists in the parks is shocking because assumedly because they've been told these aren't dangerous animals. But I don't know if you've seen that kind of thing where people are starting to and then the bear starts to get sort of more aggressive and starts to push back a little bit and test the waters, and it's like, I'm looking at going, wow, you're instigating a bear attack, and they think they're getting social media videos, Well, I just want to say that I really appreciate you putting this book out because it's important that this narrative reaches people because again, the narrative has been sort of deceiving. And so I hope that you push this book forward a little bit with some additions. Cause
yeah, I'm going to try, but you know what? I don't think it's going to change anything because anybody who's going to read a book like mine is somebody who's kind of interested in the first place.
Yeah. Well, it helped me. It helped me, man. I got to say, and I'll pass that information on. So, I mean, I've benefited from it. Well, Carl, thank you so much for your time today.
Sure. It was fun.
Thanks for listening to the WildFed podcast. You can help us grow this show by subscribing and leaving us a rating and review. It ensures better rankings and more advertiser interest, which translates directly into better shows, more awesome guests, and a constant stream of fresh, new content. Have a question you'd like answered on the show, or a hunting, fishing, or foraging trip you'd like to host us on? Email us at info@wild-fed.com. And be sure to visit our website, wild-fed.com, to check out the WildFed video show and store. WildFed. Food is all around you.